Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Making the Case. Let me say a warm welcome to all of you who are joining me across the length and breadth of this country, and those of you who are joining me from overseas. Before I go into the content of tonight's program, I just wish to acknowledge and to empathize with the persons who are affected by the devastating flood that we have seen recently. Our party leaders and activists have visited several of these areas across the country, which have been affected by the flooding brought about by the unusual spring tides. We have witnessed firsthand the suffering of citizens and the suffering of those whose homes have been flooded, those who have been discomforted, and those who have had their livelihoods disrupted. Many have suffered untold damage to their property and their livelihoods and may never recover from the devastation brought about by this unfortunate event. And so I wish to express my empathy with those who are suffering and devastated by the recent flooding. We have seen a proclamation issued by Mr. Granger officially naming March 2nd, 2020 as the day for general and regional elections. And it is not lost that this date is almost 15 months after the government lost a vote of no confidence in our National Assembly. Guyana will make history as being the first country ever, and the APNU AFC coalition will be the first government ever to lose a vote of confidence in its National Assembly and not immediately call elections. The elections, as you know, should have been held 3 months after the passage of the motion, after the passage of the motion on the 21st of December. And so we should have had elections, as you know, in March of this year, and now we will have elections in March 2020. But at least we have a date, and we knew that the elections had to be called, and so we look forward to your support at the upcoming elections. And of course, the good thing about this is that we now have time to ensure that we scrutinize the process, especially at GECOM, and that we ensure that the integrity of our election is safeguarded. Now, talking about GECOM, this brings me to some disturbing events that we saw last week, and I would like to take you through the sequence of these events so that you can have a good understanding of what we are up against and why we must always remain diligent during this period and running up to the elections. Now, last Tuesday, I mentioned on this program that the Commission had decided on a claims and objections period which would last for 35 days. And the full Commission made this decision last Tuesday at their statutory meeting, that the claims and objections period will last for 35 days, beginning on October 1, which is today. And so that period of claims and objections did begin today. Now, on Friday morning, it was brought to our attention that a notice was published in the official gazette stating that the claims and objections period will run for 49 days. Now, as I said before, the Commission had decided that the period would be for 35 days. And then lo and behold, this publication in the official gazette that the period for claims and objection, the period allocated for that period, is 49 days. But that was not the most surprising thing about the publication. The worst thing about the publication, and this was reinforced by a press release that was signed by the PRO of GECOM, Ms. Yolanda Ward, set out a new requirement for persons who are already on the list to go into a GECOM office or the GECOM office in their area with their identification to verify their registration record. This means that every citizen must go, based on the order, based on the notice that was published and the press release that was subsequently published, set out this new requirement that foisted on the citizens of this country an obligation to go into the nearest GECOM office, present their ID card, and verify their registration record in order to be included on the official list of electors. And as a consequence of not going, we can assume that those names would be left off of the official list of electors. Now, according to the law, a claims and objections period is only for persons seeking to make a claim to be included on the list or to make objections to their voters' information. However, the release read this, and I want to say, quote verbatim what it said. It says, during this exercise, every person whose name appears on the preliminary list of electors must visit the registration office in their respective area with their national identification card to verify their registration record in order to be included in the official list of electors. The Constitution does not impose such a requirement on the citizens of Guyana. Further to that, it is a clear violation of the ruling of the Chief Justice, Madam Roxanne George, when she ruled that it is unlawful for persons to be deregistered in the recently attempted and now aborted house-to-house registration exercise. If you would recall, that house-to-house exercise was challenged in our courts, and the Chief Justice ruled that it was illegal and unconstitutional to remove any voter whose name is already on the voters list without proper cause, and the grounds for removal are clearly set out in our Constitution. One of the grounds is for reasons of insanity. A second reason that a person can be removed from the list is if they have been convicted of an elections fraud. But outside of those requirements, let's say a residency, for example, someone who is living overseas, that is not a ground set out in our Constitution to remove someone from the list of electors. So right away, we knew that this new requirement is illegal, is unlawful, it is unconstitutional, and it was another way of them to try to foist another version of house to house on the citizenry of this country. And it is in fact mischievous and malicious of the Secretariat of GECOM to try to impose such a requirement. Now, yesterday we saw that the order of September 26, which was the order last week, was nullified by the GECOM chair. Now, the commissioners on the opposition side approached the chair on Friday morning itself, to bring to her attention the 49 days, the incorrect 49 days, and the requirement to have persons go into GECOM offices with their ID. And the commissioners reported back through a press conference that they held on Friday itself that the chairman herself seemed surprised that that notice was published in the official gazette with those erroneous requirements. However, she was the one to sign the notice. It bore her signature at the bottom. She seemed to have claimed that she had no knowledge of it, and that she would work expeditiously to have it corrected. Now, yesterday, as I said, we saw an order that was corrected to some extent, to the extent that the requirement to have persons visit a GECOM office to verify their registration, that part was left out of the publication. But the period for claims and objections was changed from 49 days to now 42 days. Another period which was not decided on by the commissioners of GECOM. So this, from all indications, we were told that today the CEO Lowenfield tried to justify why 42 days was the preferred amount of days to be allocated for claims and objections period. And it was put to a vote again, it was put to the commission again, and the chairman herself voted with the commissioners from the government side. And so the period for claims and objections now has been extended by 1 week. So we've moved from 35 days to 42 days. Now, even though we have sought to clear that up somewhat, and at least the Constitution and the ruling of the Chief Justice stands in that they cannot deregister persons if you don't go to the office, and so you are not required. Let me just make it clear. Those of you who are already on the list and those of you who have voted in previous elections and your name is on the list of electors, you do not need to go into GECOM to verify your registration. If you need a transfer or you need some changes to your name for married women or so on, you have any name change or any change of address, you can do so during this period. Also, those persons or those young persons who would have attained the age this year, persons who would attain the age of 18 by this year end, the 31st of December being the qualifying date, are eligible to get registered during this period. That is, of course, if you were not registered when you attain the age of 14. Or any person who up to this point never sought to have their name put on the voters list, this is the time to do so. And so we encourage everyone to try to get on the list and to be a part of this very, very serious election that we have coming up. I like to call it the mother of all elections because, you know, come March 2nd, 2020, you will be deciding not only on a future for yourself, but for the children of this country. And of course, every week here on this program on Making the Case, I like to make the case, and of course with the help of many of the callers who call in and with the guests that I sometimes have, we make the case as to why the People's Progressive Party would be the better choice of the two major political parties to take this country forward. And I want to state unequivocally that the nullification of the erroneous and the malicious publication that appeared in the official gazette, the correction of that should not and must not be the end of the matter. I am convinced, and I think that you would be too listening to me at home, that a full investigation is warranted in this regard to find out who in the Secretariat is responsible for this egregious, fraudulent act. And of course, to decide on the appropriate consequential actions that should follow. The Secretariat at GECOM seems to have gone rogue. The GECOM chair is just one person. And even though we have some oversight there with our commissioners and so on from the opposition side, it is an entire secretariat that is working against the chair and against our commissioners there. And so I do applaud our commissioners for their hard work and their due diligence. And we also, on the outside and on the ground, should do our part. And I encourage all of you who are watching me or listening to me this evening to do your part on election day or whenever you have the opportunity to be diligent and to ensure that come elections day, there is no violence at polling stations and that the People's Progressive Party polling agents are safe, that our statements of polls are secured and are returned to our secretariat, our election secretariat at our headquarters at Freedom House. And so I encourage the involvement of every citizen to protect and safeguard the integrity of our elections. And in so doing, we can now find one of the best ways to try to safeguard and protect the integrity of the elections and as Mr. Granger likes to say, the credibility of the elections. And one very, very important and proven way of ensuring that the elections are credible is to have the presence of international observers at GECOM. Now, last year, if you could recall, I discussed on the program that last year, there was a United Nations recommendation given to GECOM that a house-to-house registration process, when GECOM was exploring embarking on this house-to-house activity since in 2018, there was a recommendation by the United Nations that said that house-to-house registration is completely unnecessary and would fail to increase the integrity of the voters list. And so, since that recommendation did not find favor with GECOM at the time under the chairmanship of the illegally appointed Chairman Patterson, he had since refused help from the United Nations and from international observers. And so still, we do not have international observers at GECOM, but we are working very hard to ensure that the help that is being offered to us from the international community and from international observers, we are working very hard to ensure that those observers are brought on board. But of course, we know that the CEO, Mr. Lowenfield, will fight tooth and nail to not have them there. And of course, he has the support of the entire Secretariat, who seems to be working as a unit to undermine our elections. And so even though we hear Mr. Granger talk about credible elections, I cannot imagine that someone or a party that speaks so often about having credible elections would refuse international help and the assistance of international observers to protect and safeguard the integrity and credibility of our elections. And so that in itself shows the citizenry who exactly, which party exactly is fighting for free and fair elections. And that party, as you know, is the People's Progressive Party. Since in the 80s, since during Burnham time, we have been fighting to have free and fair elections in this country. In 1985, we had an election, another rigged election, and the elections were due in 1990 at the end of 5 years. And Dr. Jagan voted to extend the life of that government for 2 extra years, taking us to 1992, just to ensure that the elections would be free and fair, just to ensure that all of the safeguarding measures and mechanisms were put in place to ensure the delivery of free and fair elections in this country for the first time, to ensure that the vote of citizens count for the first time. And so the rest is history. As you know, the People's Progressive Party won those free and fair elections that were held in 1992 under the watchful eye of the Carter Center. And so all we are asking is for the same to happen on the 2nd of March and before the 2nd of March. International observers need to be present in GECOM as soon as possible, as early as possible, to ensure the security of the ballot. And so I don't want to go on for too much longer. I would like to leave extra time tonight to take your phone calls and to let me hear what you were thinking and what contributions you have in terms of the elections. Now we have, as I mentioned earlier, the situation with the flooding, and during that time when the leader of the opposition and our presidential candidate were on the ground meeting with those affected by the flooding, the ministers of the government were on ministerial outreaches in Lethem, totally oblivious and showing no care and regard for those rice farmers who are devastated by the floodwaters. And even today, the leader of the opposition and Mr. Irfan Ali met with groups of them today at the office of the leader of the opposition to see what help we can give to them. And of course, you know, you open the papers every day, crime is on the rise, and Minister Ramjitan is also in space when it comes to any crime fighting strategy. We are yet to hear him introduce any sort of new crime fighting strategy or any policy or any mechanism or any idea whatsoever in terms of how he plans to reduce the crime situation in this country. But he is quite happy giving interviews to the media and interviews to promote himself for his eligibility to the prime ministerial candidate position. So that is consuming his time and not looking after the citizenry of this country. We have a caller on the line. We'll go to the phones. Let me see. So we missed that caller. So as I was saying, here. Caller, good evening.
Good night, madam.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to find out one thing. Is there no confident motion pass?
Can you speak up? Can you speak up a little bit? I want our viewers to hear you.
There's no confident motion pass, right?
Yes.
With this government and the PNC and GECOM, with all the mischief what they're doing, why nobody get in jail until now? I want to know, with all this mischief, nobody get in jail.
Okay, caller. Thank you. So, we have said over and over again, like this caller just said, that with the things we are witnessing that are being done by persons in authority, meaning ministers of this government, and what is playing out at GECOM, especially by the Chief Elections Officer, some of these border or cross the border into criminality. And we will definitely be looking into this, but as you know, we are not in government right now, but we are slowly and diligently gathering our evidence so that we don't end up looking like this bunch now who were making up false rumors and talking about corruption under the PPP and has never been able to make a single case. They certainly like to file charges, but they've not been able to make a single case as to any corruption or any abuse of office during the tenure of the PPP when they were in office. And so, again, I appeal to those of you who are on the fence. I know many persons in 2015 came off of that fence and supported the coalition government. Their support originally began with a support for the Alliance for Change, the AFC, because they saw the AFC as a third party. The AFC had held themselves out as the balance between the two parties, and from 2011 to 2015, they attempted to be the voice of reason in our National Assembly. And persons had appreciated that, persons who were on the fence. But in 2015, when they decided to join the APNU coalition, they abandoned all of the values that they had prior to 2015. And so now, with the abandonment of those values and characteristics that had originally aided in the formation of that party, they have now lost all of their support. And sorry, we have a caller. They have now lost all of their support from those persons who originally wanted to support a third party. And so we have a caller on the phone. I'm going to go to the line and then I will continue. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Comrade Howard. I think that y'all, with this political thing we are dealing with, is y'all high school graduate, I think y'all need to step aside and let the people of the country run this country. Because y'all, all of y'all corrupt. The previous government, the government in this power, everyone of y'all corrupt. None is the good.
Okay, caller, that's your contribution? Hello? So, I don't know who he's referring to, being a high school graduate. I don't have to toot my own horn as to my qualifications. But, if the caller wants to run the country, he can certainly go put himself out there. Even though we have a creeping dictatorship, I still believe we are a free society. And so if that caller wishes to form his own party, since he doesn't trust any of the political parties, he is certainly free to do so. And, I hope that he doesn't only have a high school education himself. Caller, good evening.
Oh, hi, Susan. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I just want to say it is very troubling what's happening at GECOM. And I know I spoke of the foreigners previously. I am going to contradict myself. We do need them desperately now to oversee this election. Not only people from the North America, we need people from around the region as well to oversee that GECOM is doing the right thing, because they have gone, there are those in that GECOM who has gone rogue since January, starting with the illegal chairman who took extra time off when he was needed at work.
Yes.
And something, if they are not being overlooked, if people are not looking at what's happening there, I don't think we will have a free and fair election. And I'm surprised that our highly recommended chairman would sign something that she didn't read. So as I said, we need foreigners overseeing what's happening there.
Yes,
Thanks.
and okay, caller, thank you for coming through. And what best way to show that your intentions are pure and clean? If you claim that you want credible elections, what best way than to bring in the international observers? I mean, that would show your actions would match what you say when you take the podium and call for credible elections. And as we know, this president has been calling over and over for credible elections, and he talks about how bloated the list is and all of these things. And we have these observers who have written today to the Guyana Elections Commission offering help, and their help is yet to be accepted. Caller, good evening. Hello? Yeah, we lost that caller. And so talking about the caller before, talking about high school graduate, this brings to my attention. This reminds me that the president that we now have, who they claim have all of these degrees and certificates and so on, Mr. Granger has a degree in history, and that is the only degree that he possesses or that he has ever acquired in his lifetime. So, but as we know, the persons who like to call and have no basis for what they're saying, they just like to repeat things that they hear. And so I wonder if the man with the history degree, if he is not concerned about his legacy, how would history view him? Is it that he wants to be seen as a dictator? Or does he want to be seen as someone who fought and represented and promoted democracy? But I think he has certainly missed a golden opportunity. Caller, good evening. Somebody seems to be tying up my phone line. It's a pity that they do not have words to express themselves. And so that allows me some more time to call. But those of you who are genuinely trying to get through this evening, please keep trying, even though someone is trying to tie up my phone line. I do have a caller coming through now. Caller, good evening.
Hello, good night. I'd
Good night,
like
dear.
to know where Allen Smart Party come from. Where Allen Smart Party come from? What really they go do?
Okay, caller, thank you. I'll respond in a minute. Yeah. So, like I was saying earlier, the AFC originally was seen as a third force or a third party to balance out our National Assembly and to ensure that no political party, none of the major political parties had absolute power. And when they did so, they got a lot of support from the persons who were independent of either of the major parties. But now, as we've seen, they have completely lost that support. And many of the persons who had previously supported the PPP and went over to the AFC are now back with the People's Progressive Party. Caller, good evening. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good night, Susan.
Good night.
How are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Tell me something.
Mm-hmm.
If that is such a simple incident in GECOM and it carrying the chairman's signature, possibility that when the election are called and finished, that they could have a separate results and her signature might be at the bottom, and there's nothing she could do about it. She have to pretend she doesn't know how it got here. This is my first point, right?
Uh-huh.
The billboard that they had with the two roads, I think the park kept the promise.
Oh, that I showed last
They
week?
highlighted last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they kept the promise, but you misinterpret what was the promise. The promise was, they got a promise that they will see a billboard with two roads, one in which they will not have. That was the promise that was kept. And I got something I want to read to you. One of the most prominent idiosyncrasies of the PNC party is the inveterate tendency that once they are in government, extirpating all mechanisms that could be used to remove them from office is the paramount objective and sole reason for governing. The economy, democracy, the natural resources, adhering to international standards is of no importance to them. The only paramount objective they have is removing all mechanism that could remove them from office, getting rid of it. They have no other reason for governing.
Okay,
Suzanne. Thanks.
okay, caller, thank you very much. I'll respond in a minute, but we have another caller on the phone. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good evening there.
Good evening, sir.
I would just like the supporters of AFC to recognize what the party they voted for did to them. They pretended to be an independent party, but they always were determined to be part of the coalition. So that, in other words, it was a ruse, it was a deception, and the supporters of the AFC should recognize this and not be so foolish to go back once again in support of a party that blatantly lied to them. Thank you for my call.
Thank you very much for your contribution. And that's essentially what I've been saying, is that, there were many persons, especially from the middle class in this country, who had decided that, they wanted to support a third party. And these members of the Alliance for Change held themselves out as people of integrity, people that we can trust. And we know one of them is Kathy Hughes. And we now know the situation she is embroiled in of the corruption within her ministry, awarding herself contracts. And so these same persons, they have lost their integrity, and the AFC is no longer what it stood for in 2015, what it stood for in 2011. And so they have lost that support. And the reality now is that the AFC really, they have nothing to offer the coalition, because they have lost the majority of their support. And so now they have to stay even closer to the coalition and to the PNC especially. So the PNC is now carrying the dead weight of the AFC. And so if Ramjatan thinks that he will be the prime ministerial candidate, I do wish him luck, but he, along with his government, is dreaming. Caller, good evening.
Good night. As a concerned citizen of this country, the things that is happening at GECOM office, I think that the opposition leader should call investigation. Let them call the investigation. Insist that they investigate that place, because these mishaps that is being taking place there, it's coming too quick.
Yes.
And too often.
Mm-hmm.
This is not mistakes. These are direct actions. I mean, a little child could tell you that.
Yes.
You don't have to go to Oxford in London to understand that. These are
That's
things,
right.
These are things, and especially that GECOM chairman, she was an ex-judge. She ought to know what she has to sign and what she must check and what she must not check. She's a big lady. She's not a young girl. She's a big individual. She has that experience.
Yes.
So I think that this place is supposed to have an investigation, and all those people that make those differences and those disregards the citizens of this country should be brought to justice and, if possible, put in jail. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. You know, and I find it hard to believe that this was the judge in the Esther Pereira case who was unafraid and bold enough when the PPP were in power. She had nothing to fear, and she was bold enough to order fresh elections within 3 months. She ordered that in the Esther Pereira case. And so the elections of 97 had to be held over within 3 months. And in that time, nobody had to find out, or nobody had to ask GECOM if they were ready to hold these elections within 3 months. GECOM has always been ready, has always been prepared, and should always be prepared to hold elections at any time within 3 months. And that is why that 3-month stipulated time frame is there within our Constitution, because it is more than enough time for the Elections Commission to be ready for elections. That is their job. That is their mandate given to them by the Constitution, to be always ready, to be in a perpetual state of readiness. And so even if you had plans of doing house to house or whatever activity you had plans of doing, at any time such plans can be aborted, and the Commission goes into overdrive to ensure it can hold and deliver credible, free and fair elections in this country. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
And why you are so unfair, man?
Who's unfair?
Now listen to this, right? These farmers will get problem in swallowing them kind of thing. This government waiting to your test. They have a answer proper. They're waiting for us to...
I can't, slow down. Why what?
These right farmers affected by the flood.
Yes.
Government waited, right, for the assessment of It's about Jack. Why you are playing politics?
They waited for what? The assessment? No, I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
So listen to me, right?
I am listening to you. Go ahead.
Government waiting, get the finance, So what is the
Oh,
problem?
I see. Uh-huh.
The opposition run up and government now.
So tell me something. How much does it take for somebody in the government to just go and listen? What does it take for them to just go and listen to the plight of these people who have been devastated by the flood? How are they going to know? You said they have to assess. How are they going to assess the situation if they don't go out there and listen to the people? Oh, but that was a disaster. That was a disaster, and everything has to be dropped, and that has to be given the priority. That is how you show that you're a government that cares. Those persons are facing serious devastation in those communities.
Not them alone, the problem, friend. What you have to understand.
Exactly. The whole country has problems. You are so right. The entire country has problems. And it's as a result of this incompetent government that we have.
Bulletin to these people that have to make preparation.
Right. Okay, Carl. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much for coming through, Carl.
Yeah, I really did.
You made a very good case as to how everybody in the country is suffering, and everybody has problems, and that, as you know, is a result of this incompetent, corrupt cabal that we have in the coalition. Caller, good evening.
Good evening. I heard you speaking about GECOM and its role. Can you say why Steve Sorge-Bally, when he was demitting office, advised that the list be revised?
Okay, that's your question?
Yes, because
okay.
It seems as if no one is questioning why he, who was in the chair for so many years, and on his departure, suggested that that list be revised.
Okay, caller, thank you very much for your question. Now, before every elections, and not just before an election, but incrementally during the 5 years, GECOM carries out and holds claims and objections period, which I think it's every 6 months, I believe it is. And in that time, the list is always refreshed or revised, or whichever word you wish to use, because the list has to constantly be updated. Every day, persons are becoming of age, are becoming 18, and they're then eligible to go on the list, or they're attaining the age of 14 and they wish to register and to be placed onto the National Register of Registrants until they become 18 years old, and then their name is extracted and it goes on to the list of electors. So the list is constantly being refreshed and revised, and of course we know every day there are persons who pass away, and house to house is one method in which we can use to make sure that all of those persons who have passed or persons who are ineligible of being on the list are removed. But it is just one way, and it was the most time-consuming and expensive way of doing so. And certainly the GECOM had no business carrying out or embarking on a house-to-house registration activity in the period in which it did, after a vote of no confidence in our National Assembly. And so that house-to-house activity during that time, the intention was not to revise the list or to bring credibility to the list. The intention behind that house-to-house activity was just to delay elections. And that's as clear as day. And everybody, I think everybody, all the citizens accept and realize that that was the sole purpose on which that activity was embarked upon. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good night, Susan.
Hi.
I don't trust the GECOM chairman. because she promised the opposition leader he will get election before the year out.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something else, she switched. So I don't trust her. And secondly,
Okay.
David Ranger should step down and call election this year. We want election. Because no business ain't going the way that is supposed to be in this country.
Mm-hmm.
No baby the fish ain't running in the sea.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I
Yes.
don't know if the fish not scared of Ranger or whosoever. Because I don't know why. The flooding that take place, that is a government problem. Whether which government in power, if it's PPP, PNC, AFC, who, the government responsible for that, they get money for that. And they need to protect the citizens.
Exactly, or the least you could have done was go and lend your support, lend an ear to the plight
they
of
don't
the
have time
people.
with that. They don't have time with that. They're busy behind the aisle and they forget election.
Mm-hmm.
I think they want election till next 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the government need to, which government in power? So I don't know you tolerating these type of call and talk about and nonsense on your program. What they are?
Yeah. You know, I am not afraid when they call me with their opposing views. I'm not afraid of them at all. I like to give them a chance, and it gives me a chance to respond to them.
Conscience. I don't know why.
Yeah.
You know, you could stand beside somebody as new supporters, and they go went to the supermarket and they talking how things gone up, and when they come back and see you behind of them, they say, oh, don't say anything. They shame.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to talk, but the pressure hitting them.
Right.
But they don't want to come out and talk. The pressure
Absolutely,
hitting
yeah.
every single body. Not only the people who support us, not only the rich man,
Mm-hmm.
not only the poor man. So the government needs to step down and call election. I think election should be this month.
Well, you know, these people are so untrustworthy that if the GECOM chairman had forced the date for elections this year, they themselves would have turned around and challenged the results of the elections like they did in the Esther Pereira case.
Well, the
So
chairman brought me to remember back Chase Green when she signed the party meter contract. And she
okay,
didn't read.
yeah.
She signed. So I don't know, a former judge, how could she know the corruption that is GECOM and you wouldn't read at what she signed? Come on, something wrong. Thank you.
Okay, caller, thank you for coming through. And one of the callers that called in a little bit earlier when he was talking about the picture I put up last week about the two roads and about the road to Lethem and the coalition government holding themselves out as promise kept, but the road is coming soon. The international community that was funding that project has since said that the funds have been stalled, so the funds will not be released for that road to Lethem. So I don't know how the coalition is promising that promise is kept when the funding for that road has now been frozen, and they go on and on with their empty promises. I mean, this is the government, and we can point to their double speech all the time. They speak out of both sides of their mouths. So we continue to hear promise after promise, and of course we know that these promises are empty because you can simply look at their actions and judge for yourself. So the new thing they're running with now is free education from nursery to tertiary. Now, come on. This is the administration. This APNU AFC is the administration that took away $10,000 from our school kids. $10,000 they said they could not afford to give each school child, but they're going to give every child free education from nursery to tertiary. I mean, even the high school graduates that one of the other callers talked about know that That is impossible. That is a ridiculous promise being made to the people of this country by APNO AFC. And I think people know better than to fall for that again. Caller, good evening. And so we are yet to see any plan for the development and the transformation of this country. And as the last caller spoke about oil, we have seen the disastrous negotiations with the oil contracts. Even if you want to give them a pass on Exxon, even though they should not be given a pass, because that contract was renegotiated after we were assured, after we struck oil as a nation. And so even if you want to give them a pass on the Exxon contract, what happened to the Tullow contract? Did they learn nothing from the botched negotiations with Exxon? That we negotiated a second contract that is now worse than Exxon's, a 0% royalty, because the 1% is recoverable, and you have the Minister of Natural Resources saying he was ordered to sign that contract, and nobody's asking him who ordered him to sign that contract. Don't we want to know? Don't we demand an answer as a nation, as a people, law-abiding citizens? We pay our taxes, and we do everything. We try to avoid breaking the law because nobody wants to go to prison. You pay your taxes, you be decent law-abiding citizens, and you have a minister saying that he was ordered to sign a contract and nobody asking questions as to who ordered the minister to sign that contract. Where are the journalists in this country? Trotman should have a mic in his face everywhere he goes. Who ordered you to sign the contract, minister? Lowenfield should have a mic in his face and a camera in his face everywhere he goes, asking him who signed, who authorized that publication in the official gazette. So I certainly hope that the people of this country can stand up. You're not standing up for a political party. You're standing up for right and wrong. Caller, good evening.
Hello, good evening to you, Susan.
Good evening.
I'm getting through for the first time.
Okay, welcome, caller.
Well, I must say, I look forward to your program every week.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment about...
Can you speak up a little bit,
Yeah,
caller?
I just want to make a comment about Mrs. Claudette Singh,
Yes.
the GECOM chairman. I don't know if you ever noted her face. She looks to me like she's very, very scared. Like if she's standing on a bomb waiting to explode anytime. She looks to me like her face is sheer fright. I don't know what is she afraid of. Why is she so scared?
Okay, caller.
I would just like to say that it has been rightly said that if you want something to be said, you ask a man to say it. And if you want something to be done, you ask a woman to do it. So I am a woman. We're asking Claudette Singh to do her job, to get it done, to do it, and to get it right. Thank you very much.
Okay, caller. Thank you very much for coming through. And that caller reminds me of what Justice Claudette Singh said when she was sworn in. I remember very specifically, she said that she will uphold the Constitution of this country. And when I heard her say that, I had full confidence. I said, okay, this is a woman. I read about her. I read about her decisiveness in the Esther Pereira case, and I had high regard for her. And as the caller said, I support her as a woman, and I hope that she can find her strength. I know that it's not easy to sit on that commission, to be the chairman of that commission when you have the entire organization working against you. But she is in charge, and she must take up that mantle, and she has to bring everyone in line, if she is to do what she said she will do, which is uphold the Constitution of this great country. I think I have time for just one more caller, and then I have to go. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good evening, my dear. Suzanne?
Yes, caller.
I hope when the people go in power, they have to get a lot of auditors on these fraud that goes on.
Yes.
A lot of businessmen do not know they have a paper trail. They think that books and paper could throw away. But all banks have paper trail. And that is where they don't understand that these matters will be picked up. That's one. Two, I'm really disappointed of the chairman. She's Claret. I never expected she would do that. I thought she would have taken her word and uphold the Constitution. That's all I have to say, my dear.
Okay, caller. Thank you very much for coming through. And I share the concern of the two previous callers. That is all the time I have this evening. I thank you once again for joining me tonight, and I look forward for your continued contribution and participation in this program next week. Until then, have a safe week and good night.